See the facts when there was still time. The end our addiction, fossil fuel addiction, dependence on future existence, inventions. Activate, advocate, organize, stand up and join the resistance. There will be a reckoning. Mother Earth is threatening us. There's no other choice. Hear our children's voice. Earth's on fire, 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 Earth's on fire, truth is in the science, no more political defiance. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire, 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 Earth's on fire, truth is in the science, no more political defiance. Rising seas, drought, famines, floods could bring us to our knees. Warning, warning, sound the alarm, take action for humanity. Stop this insanity, get clarity, carbon neutrality. There will be a reckoning. Mother Earth is threatening. There's no other choice. Earth's on fire, 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 Earth's on fire, truth is in the science, no more political defiance. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire, 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 Earth's on fire, truth is in
got a big heart, I can let you in. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the world. People ask me what my secret is, I just smile and say, live for today. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the sun came up and I gotta say, see it in a whole new way. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. On top of the world. Yeah. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. People ask me what my secret is. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Ask me what my secret is. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world. Yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. Got that smile upon my face, cause there's excitement in the chase. This I know. Yeah, I'm going for the ride and find myself, I am alive, and I soar. Still I run towards the wind and let the challenge draw me in, cause I want more. All looking for adventure. We are 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 all looking for adventure. Oh, wake up heart and wake up mind, and see the world is yours to find. And with every passing day there's more, calling you out to explore. Get up and go. There is joy found in the race, and I feel it in the place where I'm free. And I simply can't deny it, that I feel adventure calling out to me. Yeah, we are all looking for adventure. 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 We are all looking for And I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be. Living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be. I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be free, meant to be free.
Magandang hapon, Pinoy climate reality leaders. Magandang hapon, climate advocates. Thank you for joining us today for the 20th episode of our Klimatotohanan webcast series entitled Not Voiceless but Unheard, exploring the role of youth in COP and beyond. I am Ruzzel, a climate reality leader and the youth cluster coordinator of the Climate Reality Project Philippines. Co-hosting with me today is Kendrick Faronilo, a fellow climate reality leader. Hi, Kendrick. Thank you for accepting our invitation to host this very special episode.
Magandang araw, Roz, and regards as well to all our friends in the climate movement who are joining us today on Facebook Live. It is an honor to be co-hosting this episode with you. And just a short background about me. Again, I'm Kendrick Faronilo, also part of the youth cluster, and I'm studying at the UPLB School of Environmental Science and Management, and I'm currently serving as president of the Philippine Association of Environmental Science Students. Para naman sa episode ngayong araw, mag-uusapan natin ang mga napag-usapan ng mga world leaders sa itinuturing na most important climate event of the century, ang Conference of Parties o COP26. Ito ang annual climate summit kung saan nakapag-usap ang iba't ibang leaders and representatives from all over the world nang dapat pantay-pantay ang estado tungkol sa climate policy. Emphasize lang natin yung phrase na dapat pantay-pantay. Isa sa mga pinakamaraming issue nitong huling COP and most ng global summits ay ang lack of inclusion at representation.
Nako, agree ako sa iyo dyan, Kendrick. Itong COP26, disappointingly, mas marami pang representation from the fossil fuel industry kaysa kahit anong country delegation. With 503 delegates, mas marami pa sila sa combined number of delegates ng 8 most vulnerable countries to climate change, which includes the Philippines. Isa pa sa dinadaing na issues ay ang lack of representation ng indigenous peoples and the youth, two of the most affected sectors ng mga desisyon na ginagawa sa COP. Kapag nagsispeech ang mga world leaders tungkol sa climate change, lagi nilang sinasabi na ito ay plan for the youth. Pero paano siya magiging plan for the youth kung walang youth na involved sa pagpaplano?
Tama ka dyan, Roz. Iilan lang yan sa mga issue na tatalakayin natin sa episode na ito. And first, yung lack of representation and inclusion sa COP at sa iba pang climate policy engagements. At ikalawa, kung paano naaapektuhan ng youth at iba pang vulnerable sectors sa naging resulta ng COP26. At dahil hindi lang tayo kasama sa pinaka-apektado ng COP26 at climate crisis, tayo rin ang isa sa pinaka-aktibo na lumalaban para sa climate justice at ang mga totoong solusyon sa climate crisis. I-explore rin natin ang mga magagawa at nagagawa na ng youth para ipaglaban ang karapatan nating maging bahagi sa policy making at decision making processes.
Ayun, so we are very thankful to be joined today by individuals and organizations working on ensuring this very thing, inclusive policy making and meaningful and genuine representation of the youth and other vulnerable sectors. Pero bago ang lahat, nais ko munang paalalahanan ng ating viewers na meron ulit tayong Certificate of Participation para sa mga sumusubaybay sa ating episode. Ipopost lang namin sa comment section ng Facebook ang instructions para paano makakuha nito.
Okay, in fact, marami na tayong viewers sa ating Facebook Live, pero mamaya pa natin sila babatiin pag nag-comment na sila dun sa comment section below. And syempre, maraming salamat ulit dun sa mga nanonood kahit hindi pa nagko-comment. Roz, wag na nating patagalin pa, ipakilala na natin ang mga guests ngayong hapon.
All right, Kendrick, let me do the honor of introducing our first guest, Sophia Caralde. Sophia is currently taking her Juris Doctor at the Ateneo de Manila University School of Law and is a team member of Parabukas, an Asia-based international consultancy that aims to enable and enhance understanding of complex legal language, concepts, and processes by decision makers and stakeholders. She has been involved in different youth climate actions such as the September 2019 Global Climate Strikes and recently the Local Conference of the Youth or LCOY in the Philippines. In 2020, Sophia represented the Philippines as an official delegate to MOC COP26, which is the youth's take on COP26. Mock COP26 culminated with a global declaration to world leaders, showing the ambition and dreams of the youth worldwide for a fair, equal, and green world. We are so lucky to have her in today's discussion. Let's all welcome Sophia Caralde. Hi, Sophia. Thank you for spending your Saturday afternoon with us.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you also for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us this afternoon. And as a sneak peek to today's episode, we have a warm-up question for you. Why is youth Why is youth representation important? And in the work that you do in Parabukas, how do you ensure that young people are genuinely represented?
Well, the simple answer would be it's our future that's at stake in this kind of discussion. So we want to be involved in the discussion. And may sinasabi sila before na decision makers should not plan for the youth without the youth, because they should plan with the youth, because we're the main stakeholders of their plans and projects. So that's why the youth is important. And in Parabukas, we're ensuring that the youth is engaged through ensuring that we're communicating policies and laws to them in the most digestible way, because some of our laws are complex and there are intersectionalities that we need to consider when we're looking at laws, and we need to explain that thoroughly to the youth so that they would understand bakit tayo may ganitong law and how they can use it to their everyday life.
Okay, indeed, Sophia, kailangan natin i-engage and kunin yung participation ng youth for laws and policies on environmental issues. So, salamat, Sophia. Moving on our next guest is Patrick Ryan Bello. Rain Bello is a young climate reality leader, a member of the C40 Global Youth and Mayors Forum, and a physical therapy student at UP Manila. He believes that health is deeply linked to the climate crisis. Hi, Rain. We're so happy to have you with us today. And kindly say hi to our viewers as well. And just like Sophia,
Hello.
we want you to briefly answer the question, why is youth representation important? And in the work that you do in C40, how do you ensure genuine representation? Go, Rain.
Okay, sige. So yun nga, marami na rin nabanggit na points si Sophia kanina, and to expound lang in the insight and experience ko sa physical therapy, sa isa sa mga subjects namin kung saan parang mas maganda talaga na community-led approach. And ang community-led approach, ibig sabihin dito na yung mga programa na parang sabihin natin, ini-implement or parang kahit na sa planning stage, dapat talaga involved ang community, kasi ang community, ang komunidad, o pagdating dito, yung youth sector, alam natin ang ating mga pangangailangan and alam din natin kung saan tayo parang yung mga resources na kulang natin. So, mas magiging effective, mas magiging sustainable kung parang tayo yung mamumuno and parang malakas ang boses natin, malakas ang say natin kung paano i-implement yung mga programa. So sa C40 naman, since rotational actually dito sa C40, 2 years, may option na 1 year or 2 years, and sa 2 years na to, parang we have been directly communicating with global city mayors, kung saan direkta naming nabibigay ang aming collective insight, collective suggestions para mapaganda hindi lamang yung local context namin, pero tingnan rin kung yung mga mayors na to kaya rin nila ma-implement sa sariling context nila. And actually, mamaya ata, feeling ko, ma-release ko lang rin ulit, pero sabihin ko na lang rin ngayon na some of the city mayors that are part of the forum as well have created their local councils na rin, kung saan talagang mayroong direct influence and direct say ang mga kabataan pagdating doon sa policy nilang pangklima. So yun yung sanang makuha natin dito sa Pilipinas.
Thank you very much, Rain. We're so excited to learn more about these initiatives that you're into, and we agree that the community, specifically the youth sector, we know our needs. Ayan. So thank you, Rain. Ang susunod naman nating guest ay si Xian Guevarra. Xian Guevarra is the national spokesperson and chairman of the board of directors of Youth Advocates for Climate Action Philippines, o YACAP, an alliance of various individuals, youth formations, and student councils advocating for immediate climate action and climate justice. His work focuses on grassroots organizing, campaign executions, and external relations with various local and international organizations for partnerships and collaborations. As a full-time activist with a BS Physics background, he dedicates his time in advocating for science and technology that serves the people. Ayan, magandang hapon, Xian. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Ikaw naman ang tatanungin namin, why is youth representation important and how do you ensure genuine representation in YACAP?
All right, thank you so much for that, Ruzzel, and thank you guys so much for having me here. So nice to see familiar faces dun sa mga co-speakers ko din. Yeah, it's really nice kasi actually hindi ako natutuwa kasi sinagot na nila eh. Char. Bilang third ako, ang hirap. Pero sige, sasagutin pa rin natin yan. Dun sa tanong nga na bakit kailangan ng youth representation, ayun nga, very obvious naman that we are going to inherit the planet. So of course, dapat may say tayo dyan. For how many decades already, how it works is that it's going to be a white old male, okay, that dictates the future of everyone. Okay, so we want to shift away from that narrative na ngayon dapat ang mas highlight natin ay yung most marginalized, dapat yung kabataan. Tapos of course, may gender representation din tayo, hindi puro kalalakihan lang yung nagsasalita on things. Now, when we talk about how do we actually make that a reality, like for example, kami sa YACAP, what we do there is, YACAP being a youth alliance, okay, so meron siyang individuals, meron din siyang member organizations. The main point of member organizations under YACAP is that sila yung nag-direction setting. Kasi what we want to do is we want to have different perspectives. So meron kaming youth organizations that focuses more on geology, meron iba marine preservation, merong iba science communication. So lahat yon kabataan, pero iba-iba yung say nila on the same topic, which is the climate crisis. So that's one of the ways that we are pushing forward the genuine youth representation. And the second one that we highlight the most is yung grassroots organizing nga. Tsaka yung pagkakausap talaga sa community kasi it's not going to be buo. Like hindi natin mabubuo yung picture kung puro tayo lang din na privileged people or people in the cities yung nagsasalita at nag-uusap-usap about things. So we really need to talk to the grassroots sector, the urban poor, the indigenous people, the farmers, the workers, the fisher folk. So yeah, and it's so nice kasi nga I have everyone else here that also does the same thing. So yay, we're all friends and we're all happy here. Thank you.
Okay, maraming salamat, Xian. And thank you for pointing out yung gender representation. And that's very inclusive talaga. And shout out daw sa pink hair mo, sabi ni Danny. Okay, and our last speaker for our panel is Abigail Kitma. Abby is an Ibaloy Igorot from Baguio City and works with the Teba as an IP rights focal point, as well as the chairperson for the United Nations Youth Advisory Board or UNYAB. Welcome, Abby, and salamat sa pagpapaunlak sa amin ngayong hapon. And also, we want to hear your thoughts on why is youth representation important? And in relation with your work in UNYAB, how do you ensure that young people are genuinely represented? I think you're on mute, Abby.
Sorry, I hope you can hear me now.
Better.
Magtang agaw, son si kayo amin, si Abigail Kitma. So that's a good day to everyone. I am Abigail Kitma from an Ibaloy from Baguio. So a lot of the speakers before me had already elucidated many of the good points about youth participation. But I guess another thing to emphasize is that not only are we very important movers and leaders for the future for the future, but also for the present. So we actually comprise, I can't get the specific percentage as of the moment, but we do comprise a significant percentage of, for example, the Philippine population. So, you know, our vote for this election matters. What we do collectively together matters. What we say matters to change our situation right now, especially with the climate change crisis. So I'm actually more involved with the Convention on Biological Diversity, and we often hear from there that there is time, but we cannot delay, and that is what us youth can do. We can jumpstart or continue and reinforce the movement. As for our work, what we do in the UN Youth Advisory Board, one of the many ways that we can work with our advocacies is to actually link and network with different agents of change in society. So we have government, we have us youth, we have different sectoral representatives, such as women, farmers, us indigenous peoples. And for the UN Youth Advisory Board, we can connect with UN agencies and especially the heads of agencies. So that is one way. Through the individual networks and partnerships of the UNYAB members, we try to share what has been share the issues and the advocacies that our networks, our youth networks, are saying to these UN agencies, so that they also can include it in their agenda in relating with the government and other stakeholders. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby, and thank you very much for emphasizing that what we do collectively matters, especially in the context of the climate crisis, no? And thank you also for sharing how important it is to network so that others, that we can collectively work on the future that we all deserve. Ayan. So we also have a special guest this afternoon to share about the unity statement of young Filipinos to COP26 that was released last Monday. To talk about that later, we have Jacques Fallaria. Jacques Fallaria is an incoming third-year BS Biology student at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and the Institute of Biology, representative to the College of Science Student Council. He is also the current Education and Research Director of the national youth-led organization Youth Strike for Climate Philippines and has been its core member since 2019. He is an activist, filmmaker, and songwriter who is in love with the Philippine nature. Hello, Jacques. Thank you for joining us at another Climate Reality Philippines event. We so enjoyed having you at Solar Rise, and we want to hear your thoughts about this question. Why is youth representation important, and how do you ensure genuine representation at Youth Strike for Climate Philippines? Jacques?
Yeah. Okay, so to answer that question, anyway, by the way, thank you for this opportunity rin. Nasagot na nila kanina ni Ate Soph, ni Kuya Rai, ni Sir Xian, at ni Ma'am Abby yung sagot. So parang hindi ko alam kung ano yung sasagot ko kasi parang nasabi na nilang lahat. Ano? Basically, yun nga, the main point here is that tayo magmamana ng mundo, tayo magmamana ng kalikasan. No, we cannot enjoy a planet that is dying. That's why we want to preserve it for our future's sake, 'di ba? So ayun. So yun yung parang end game natin. Kailangan iligtas natin yung mundo na imamana natin sa mga susunod na panahon. So that's why malakas yung boses ng kabataan ngayon, lalo na especially in the Philippines, malaking sektor ng ating bayan yung kabataan, at may malakas tayong boses sa pagde-decide kung sino yung mga susunod nating leaders. That's why I invite everyone, just like what Ma'am Abby told us a while ago, no, na bumoto tayo ng tama, no? Bumoto tayo ng okay po. Ate Abby na lang po siguro. Ayan. Opo. So ayun, bumoto tayo ng tama, bumoto tayo ng mga leader na pipili sa kalikasan, uunahin ang kalikasan, uunahin ang kapakanan ng bansa, ang kapakanan ng mga kabataan, ang kinabukasan ng kabataan. Ayun siguro.
Okay, sige. Maraming salamat, Jacques. And I agree for both of you and Abby. Kasi nga, our vote counts hindi lang sa national level, pero hanggang international policies and environmental policies. Grabe, Ross. Intro pa lang, ang gaganda na ng ating exchange. And very exciting pa yung rest of the episode. Pero bago tayo pumunta doon, shoutout muna tayo sa mga Facebook commenters or viewers natin. So we have Sir Williza Cordova from Silay City. We also have Jeffrey Bautista from City of Imus. And then we have Nancy or Ma'am Dam from Lazi, Siquijor. So I think we're all over the Philippines talaga. Kasi di ba yung naman natin climate reality, we have Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Okay, ayan. Ready na ako para simulan ng ating discussion. So speakers, for the first segment of today's episode, pag-uusapan muna natin ang highlights ng dinaos na United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change o UNFCCC COP26. Ang daming nangyari the past 2 weeks from November 1 hanggang November 12 and nag-extend pa in a few hours later. Kaya't mabuting i-recap muna natin ang iba't ibang highlights.
Yes, Kendrick. When it comes to pledges, the first significant one, this COP26, came in the form of a deforestation pledge wherein more than 110 countries covering 85% of the world's forest committed to end deforestation by 2030. 105 countries and counting also joined the global methane pledge, envisioning a 30% cut on methane emissions by 2030 compared to 2020 levels. However, China, the world's largest emitter of methane, is not among them, nor India or Russia, whose gas industry leaks are responsible for significant methane emissions. More than 40 nations have also committed to phase out coal-fired power plants between 2030 and 2040, but the US and China are not among them. The Philippines is not a part of any of these pledges. Responsible for only 0.3% of the world's total greenhouse gas emissions, the Philippines is among several developing countries who have contributed least to the climate crisis and yet are suffering the worst of its impacts. This is why vulnerable countries are pushing for the mobilization of climate finance, and not in the form of loans, but as reparations for the destruction developed nations have wrought through their rapid industrialization. Alas, developed countries fail to fulfill their promise of providing $100 billion a year by 2020, a goal first set in 2009, now saying that it will happen in 2023.
Okay, certainly there are some gains, Roz, but we really can't deny na meron talagang maraming losses. So let's ask our speakers this afternoon, what makes this COP one of the most important COPs in the entire history of the UNFCCC? Let's start with Sophia.
Okay, ako pala first. Okay. Well, I was thinking kanina ng question na to, like, what makes this the most important? Like, even before pa siya ma-postpone ng 2020, it's already dubbed as like an important, very important COP. Because may sinasabi sila before na 2020 as a round number, parang special siya. And they want to come up with big decisions. And 2020 also happened to be the year ng 50th anniversary ng Paris Agreement. So, madaming agenda or discussions leading to that point. So, isang malaking factor yun kung bakit important tong COP26, because we're about to talk about the Paris Agreement implementation, the rule book, and kung nasa na tayo when it comes to achieving the Paris Agreement goals. And I think it's also important because it's one of the first, I think, na physical conference of parties after the pandemic. Kasi yung sa Conference of Biological Diversity na mention ni Abby kanina, the conference and the meetings were held virtually. So meron siyang repercussions on how decisions were made, if ever made decisions. Pero since it's virtual and not everyone has stable, reliable internet access, nilalesen nila yung decision making. So more on discussion points lang on plans and ano yung gusto nila makita sa draft documents. So important din yun to see how the representation of this COP will be. And we've seen na, though it was said to be the most inclusive COP, we've seen reports that it's not, and it's very white and privileged. So ayun. And I think mostly for me, it's important because dito natin makikita kung nasa na tayo when it comes to Paris Agreement. And this is our last best chance in getting our things together when it comes to limiting the global average temperature to 1.5 degrees. And siguro if in this COP, hindi siya ma-laid down properly and concretely yung actions, I think mahihirapan tayo to get back on track na. So that's why it's important.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Sophia. No, so for sharing why it's urgent and also important for us to talk about this COP26. We need to talk about the Paris Agreement implementation, the rule book, as well as, of course, where we are right now in terms of limiting the global temperature rise. And what about you, Rain? Why do you think this COP, or what makes this COP one of the most important COPs in the entire history of the UNFCCC?
Sige, so I'll just add lang din doon sa sinabi ni Sophia. I agree nga talaga na actually hindi nga rin lang sa amin ni Sophia yung nagtitingin nito, pero it's also commonly dubbed nga as yung huling chance natin para pigilan yung irreversible effects ng krisis pangklima sa environment, sa economy, pati na rin sa buhay at kabuhayan ng mga tao. And actually, sige, sabihin natin na mayroon nga tayong COP26 and para may mga pledges ang iba't ibang mga bansa. At ang sinasabi is irreversible effects by 2050, by the end of the century. Ang hindi natin masyado ring maisip, and mas lalo na sa mga taong nasa pwesto, ay it was already irreversible for other people. Sabihin natin nagkaroon ka ng kalusugang problema dahil dito sa krisis pangklima, o sabihin natin sa coal-fired power plants. And dahil dito, umalis sa trabaho ang tatay para pangalagaan ang kanyang anak, walang makuhang panibagong trabaho kasi nagsasara yung mga industriya, lalo na ngayon sa pandemic. Tapos wala sila pambayad ng gastusin, pambili. And eto, nagkakaroon na ng chain effect kung saan hindi na makaalis sa kahirapan sa mga utang, sabihin natin kung mayroon yung mga taong naapektado ng krisis pangklima. So makikita natin na isang moment na ganito, posibleng siyang magkaroon ng impact or myriad of effects. And parang wala na rin sa ating kakayahan na parang labanan nito. So yun nga talaga, we are having a less window of opportunity to mitigate or parang bawasan ang impact ng krisis pangklima sa atin. And dagdag lang rin kay Sophia na yung 2020, actually COP26 was supposed to be organized last year, 2020. And it was actually deemed as the super year of nature rin, kung saan maraming iba't ibang mga science-based evidence on nature and actually intersecting na rin sa other aspects of society, lalo na sa kabuhay ng tao and sa health ng tao and ng health ng animals, kung saan hindi lang talaga focus sa environment. And maganda rin na ang siyensya, ang agham ay kasama dito sa polisiya. Actually, yun na dapat yung mga policy natin. And yun rin dapat yung hinihingi natin sa COP26 na it's evidence-based, it's science. Bakit hindi lang yung parang guni-guni lang nila out of nowhere. Naisip natin na limitahan ang ganito pero wala namang backing ng science. That's not how policy works. Kasi, and sige, I'm not going to, para magbigay rin ako ng isang example dito sa Philippines. It's outside of COP26 na, pero it's really, parang sabihin natin, encompassing yung problem na yan na yung mga policy or programs natin hindi talaga science-backed, yung Manila Bay. Yung gastos na maaari nating sanang ginamit para sa iba sa kalusugan natin, sa kabutihan, o sabihin natin isang magandang way pero hindi naman, or parang hindi lang sole way of addressing the climate crisis ay tree planting. Sige, sabihin natin, mas mapapakinabangan sana ng planeta yung tree planting kaysa dito sa Manila Bay na wala naman talagang sapat na ebidensya. So yun yung isa sa mga rason kung bakit importante rin talaga dito sa COP26, science-backed policy. And parang last chance na nga rin as what Sophia said earlier.
Maraming salamat, Rain. And yeah, I agree with you kasi nga, di ba, ang kapal-kapal nung pinasa ng mga scientists natin, pero hindi naman pinapansin pag-implement ng policies. So yeah, evidence-based, scientific theory, dapat yun yung focus natin when implementing yung environmental laws or crafting environmental laws. But now, let's ask Xian first. Ikaw, Xian, how do you feel about this?
26 being the most important COP there is, I would say yes and no. In the sense na it's always going to be the most important kung kailan mo siya tatanungin. So ngayon 2021, bilang ito yung latest, edi of course ito yung pinaka-importante kasi ito yung mag-layout ng future natin. Pero kung magko-COP 27 next year, edi siya na yung most important thing. Kasi the idea here is, while the conference of parties, maraming ang pinag-uusapan dito, it should be like adaptive. Okay, so as minention ni Rain kanina, ang scientists natin ng IPCC, labas sila ng labas ng bagong reports, nalilik pa nga bago nila officially i-release eh. So, dapat meron ng sense yung ating mga world leaders na, okay, ito yung science, pakinggan na natin sila. So, ngayon, it's the most important one kasi may bagong IPCC release, nalik pa nga earlier this year, tapos, ngayon, very important siya in the sense na yung carbon budget natin, okay, di ba yung sinabi last year or 2 years ago na we only have 10 years? Actually, binago na nila yun eh. Like, ayaw na nilang gamitin yung narrative na number of years. Kasi yung number of years, that's very confusing. Like, mas madali siyang mag-gets ng tao, pero in reality, hindi naman siya exact. Like, we can't totally say na in 10 years, ma-reach natin yung climate tipping points, etc. So, mas inaano nga lang yung carbon budget na idea. But still, okay, ito na yung binibigay nila na, okay, guys, palala ng palala yung situation natin. Dapat tayo nag-a-adapt tayo at ginagalingan natin. Step up ng game tayo, pero wala. So, I would say na yes, it's the most important because it's the last, but it's not going to be the most important period. Kasi next year, yun na yung mas important. So, ganun siya. That's how I see it. So, dapat go lang tayo ng go at pagandahin natin ang pagandahin. So dapat yung pressure din from outside, okay, so People's Cup, andyan yan, tayo, even outside dun sa Glasgow, dapat andun yung pressure natin sa ating world leaders para galingan naman nila at hindi natin hindi natin ma-reach yung climate tipping points at ma-reach yung runaway climate change. So
Ayan, totoo. Oo nga naman siya, no? Importante siya kasi latest siya. It's as simple as that, no? And it's true na dapat maging adaptive tayo. So kung next year we have new updates regarding how we can solve this climate crisis, of course science-based, also based on our on the recent developments in with our scientists also, then mag-adapt tayo. And yun, as you've said nga, nga naman, importante siya kasi latest siya. Parang that's what I want to also emphasize. Tama nga naman. I keep on laughing kasi importante siya kasi latest siya. Ayan. So finally, Abby?
Yan, napakaganda naman ng sinabi ni kapatid na si and that's actually really true. And I don't think I'm on authority, I guess, to compare yung current COP to the previous ones because I have never been and I'm not that familiar and an expert. But I guess siguro yung magandang idagdag lang na something na we have to see also how to synchronize. Aside kasi from this COP, we also have other advocacies na may traction at the global level, such as yung UN Food System Summit, which is very much related to the climate crisis, on the Convention on Biological Diversity, underway na yung discussions for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework na napakahalaga rin talaga naman ng role ng climate, ng nature-based solutions, which is being discussed also in the UNFCCC. So there are all these things that are gaining traction, and then this thing about One Health because of the biglang nag-ano ulit dahil sa pandemic. So I guess to build on what Xian has mentioned, we should look for opportunities in every year or at all these developments at the local, national, and international level in terms of our advocacies for climate change and related issues. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Ayan, parang it gets me excited nga na we're seeing not only the importance but also urgency of this high-level meetings. And thank you also for adding Abby na yun. But there are different avenues also that we're constantly talking and negotiating about how we can solve this climate crisis, which also puts emphasis on how everything, all of our policy-making bodies are really interconnected. No, it does not exist in a vacuum. Okay, so now let's talk about goals. According to the official website of COP26, its 4 goals are: first, to secure global net zero by mid-century and keep 1.5 degrees alive by raising the ambition of countries' 2030 emissions reductions targets. This means encouraging investment in renewables while accelerating the phase out of coal. Second, to adapt to protect communities and natural habitats. Third, to mobilize finance, that is the annual $100 billion in climate finance promised by developed countries to developing countries by 2020, which has not been mobilized. And fourth, to work together to deliver by finalizing the Paris Rulebook and accelerating climate actions.
Okay, Ross. And as I mentioned kanina, kasalukuyang nag-wrap up on negotiations ngayon sa Glasgow. The COP was supposed to be closed yesterday afternoon UK time. However, as evidenced by the interventions given during the informal stock take yesterday, there is still a lot of issues being negotiated. So una, yung long-standing issue of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Pangalawa, keeping yung 1.5 degrees Celsius alive through increased ambition and phasing out of fossil fuels. And third, the increase in climate finance, particularly in adaptation finance. And lastly, setting up a separate loss and damages fund. Anytime now, the near final draft of the cover decision will be published, and according to the COP presidency, they hope to adopt the decisions and close the session this Saturday. So today yon.
Yeah, we're so excited, tayong mga nanonood, and hopefully our watchers also for today's Klimatotohanan episode, no? You can also search about the updates as it's unwrapping pa. With that, we'd like to ask our speakers briefly, what can you say about the outcomes of COP26 in terms of the set goals? And if you were to grade this COP, what grade would you give it? Pass or fail? Okay, so Sophia, in mock COP, you, alongside other young climate advocates, created a declaration to world leaders. Meanwhile, in your work with Parabukas, you aim to enhance the understanding of complex language, global negotiations, and the drafting of COP documents are perhaps some of the most complex, which can bring even diplomats to tears. But underneath all of the flowery words, how did COP26 really perform for you? Pass or fail, and why?
I would say incomplete pa because wala pa yung final decision. So like, incomplete pa, baka ma-insert pa kayong strong words mandating like concrete actions, like urgent climate actions, because that's what we want. And if kind of recommending, urging, recognizing yung terms na ginagamit natin sa decision right now, I think it's weak and it's still business as usual. So parang there's nothing new kung ganun pa rin yung stance natin. And like segue lang, because Xian was with me during mock COP26. So, ayun. But anyway, going back to COP, I think it's incomplete but going to kind of fail because of the draft decision right now. And like we're already reviewing it at Parabukas, and there are like important points that we saw. Like one is for loss and damage that we've been discussing because it's important for the Philippines because Philippines is one of the most vulnerable and we experience typhoons every year. And this typhoons, dumadami siya because of the climate change. So parang kailangan merong reparation from like developing countries or at least support from them to enable us to adapt better and become more resilient. I think one important point here is the operationalization of the Santiago network because like I was reading news and two Filipinos are actually leading up this discussion, like Mr. Vincent Yu and then the undersecretary of Department of Energy who's leading this discussion. So I think it's important that Philippines has a very strong points on this and very vocal. But then other points are kind of same when it comes to finance, adaptation means implementation. So we're still waiting for stronger words. I think if other points that like interesting for this decision is the highlight on the youth participation because pre-COP there are a lot of youth engagement that happens. So we have mock COP, we have youth for climate, like pre-COP events that was led by Italy that went up until to the pre-COP in Milan. And then we have series of local conference of the youth. So local conference of the youth, and then we have conference of the youth, who all drafted statements addressing our global leaders at COP. So it's important for us na finally, like, we're really being recognized by the UNFCCC and the global leaders, and they want us to be constantly engaged in this discussion. And I think one important point then also would be the precise point on enhancing the implementation of the Action for Climate Empowerment, which is like one of the agenda items of COP, because it talks about climate education. And as youth, this is one of the things that we are really vocal, and we want to be involved because we want to be educated, capacitated in this discussion. So I think that's okay, but still, bottom line, kind of failing, but still hoping for the best.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. Pero you gave naman an incomplete fail with reasons naman behind it, so it's okay. And I just want to agree with the losses and damages. Kasi di ba last week we commemorated the anniversary of Yolanda. So that's definitely should be paid by those emitters na nag-cause for the Philippines na vulnerable for climate crisis. Pero yeah, let's go to Rain muna. So you must also experience negotiations and discussions at a forum like C40. It takes work to get multiple parties on the same page, but with one goal, a clear vision, and passion to fight for a livable future. I'm sure that the youth will get there. But what about the world leaders at COP26? How did they do? Pass or fail or incomplete fail?
So, bago ko man bigay yung grade ko, gusto lang rin sabihin the outcomes are good but they can be better. Lalo, sige, wait, mamaya, sige, anyway, sorry. Lalo na yung may mga statements na pinalabas sila even before the meetings concluded na, pero hindi pa nagre-reflect sa final document mismo. Isa na doon ang just transition for workers na nasa fossil fuel industry when they transition to renewable sector. So dito parang may job security sila na hindi, sorry, nag-shutdown na kami, wala na kami magagawa sa'yo. Tapos sila naman yung parang problemado magkaroon ng hanap buhay. So maganda yung ganon na mag-reflect sa document. And maganda rin na yung document nila, kahit draft pa lang, mayroon rin dong recognition of the importance of engaging with stakeholders. Pero as what Sophia also mentioned kanina kung bakit incomplete yung binigay niya, ang bigay ko is 4, which in UP is conditional failure. 4 kung saan kahit na nagpasa ka, sabihin natin naging 3 yung 4 mo, parang hindi pa rin sapat. Mabibigay ko ito kasi ang tagal na ng issue ng krisis pang klima, pero parang paulit-ulit lang rin yung mga pinag-uusapan nila, and yung parang approach nila, walang radical solution, walang radical change or revolution na mangyayari for the climate crisis. And hindi pa nga ata nahanap ngayon yung common ground pagdating sa climate financing. Especially na parang may mga nagsasabi, and parang kahit mga journalists and climate activists, mga nagsasabi sila na people in power na nasa mga global north countries or mga countries na hindi more developed, na developed countries, parang hindi pa rin sila nagkakaroon ng commonality or parang intersection kung paano pagdating dito sa climate financing. And this climate financing is really one of the most important aspects in ensuring climate justice, especially for countries na mas apektado kahit na wala talaga silang ganun kataas na contribution sa krisis pag klima. So again, 4 ang ibibigay ko at hindi na dapat magiging 1.
Ayun. Iba talaga pag pag youth yung mag-grade. So far, so parang conditional fail. Condition or parang incomplete fail tayo yung so far grade ni Sophia tsaka ni Rain pero the thing that struck me the most, and probably others also that's watching, is there are talks but wala pang radical solutions, and that we're still talking, or the leaders are still talking, but kulang pa regarding talking about common grounds on climate financing. And this is important kasi as mentioned kanina ni Abby, there is time but we can't delay this climate crisis. So ayan, 4 or conditional failure. I don't know how Xian would grade this, but now let's ask Xian kasi as the national convener of YACAP, you definitely know the challenges of bringing together multitudes of people. But as evidenced by Klimalaya with the youth, goals are achieved. What can you say about how goals were achieved or not in COP26?
Alright. Si Sophia kasi tsaka si Ray mabait sila eh. Kaya kahit alam kong fail yan sa mga puso nila, sabihin nila. Bibigyan pala ng incomplete or 4. Ako hindi, masama talaga akong tao. Guys, 5 yan. Like bagsak. Kasi what Rain has mentioned, the climate crisis has been here ever since. 1970s pa lang, andito na, may mga climate activists na tayo. People have been warning about the climate crisis ever since, but here we are right now, 50 years after, andito pa rin tayo, pinag-uusapan pa rin natin to the point na hindi pa tayo quote-unquote sure kung ano ba yung dapat gawin. But science has already mentioned kung ano ba yung dapat natin gawin. Okay, tanggalin natin yung mga fossil fuels, mag-invest tayo in renewables, magkaroon tayo ng reparations dun sa mga global south countries. So, everything is already there. The question is, bakit hindi pa rin natin nakikita yon? Sila, especially COP26 this year, is the best in terms of chika prior to COP. In the sense na sabi nila, this is the most inclusive COP, pinapakinggan natin yung iba't ibang mga sectors and stakeholders, pero titingnan natin ano nangyari sa COP talaga ngayon. Okay, nasan ang kabataan, nasan ang indigenous people dyan? Kung bibilangin natin, okay, if we just count the number of people inside COP talaga na nag-uusap on the negotiations mismo, okay, talon-talo tayo ng business sector. Like, nasan yung mga NGOs, nasan yung mga climate activists, talon-talo sila ng people na nasa business sector na nandun. And of course, bilang business sector yung mga nandun, what are they going to talk about? It's going to talk about profit. How can we greenwash our way out of the things that we are saying here? So mas ganun yung nangyayari sa COP. Kaya ako personally, 5 talaga to eh. Like, pwede nila i-retake. Okay, i-retake nila next year. Mag-COP ulit tayo next year. Tapos we'll see kung ipapasa na nila yon. Pero kung ngayon talaga, yeah, as what Rain has mentioned, business as usual ang nakikita natin right now. It's just so frustrating na, yun nga, kunyari kami nila Sophia dun sa mock COP. Of course, kahit sa mock COP, hindi naman everyone is on the same page. Kasi nga, iba-iba kami ng backgrounds and everything. Pero like, kung kaya ng kabataan pala mag-isip ng mga policies at mga suggestions na okay, bakit yung mga matatanda hindi? Bakit? Kasi, profit pa rin yung nasa isip nila at yun yung business as usual pa rin yung hinahabol talaga nila even with the COP negotiation. So, sana, maayos next year or I don't know, kung kaya nila ihabol this year kasi nga, si Rain tsaka si Sophia mga hopeful. Ako hindi, pessimist ako. Pero I want to believe na merong sense, okay? At meron talagang pinanghuhugutan si Sophia at si Ray. Like, naniniwala ako, sana meron, okay? Kasi, yeah, kaya pa natin isingit. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for being real, Xian. Kasi I somewhat share your frustrations kasi nga you mentioned yung history natin on 1970s pa lang, mina-mention na that we have it's projected na pag nag-business as usual, may mangyayaring masama and something like that. And if you're familiar din sa limits to growth, maraming scenario na ginawa nung past na yun, 1970s. And mayroong limits to growth 30 years after, pero wala pa rin nangyayari. Pero andito pa rin tayo sa COP26. So yeah, hopefully, may strength yung ilalabas later. Pero before we go there, or while waiting for the final document, let's ask muna Abby. Kasi not only she's representing the youth, but also the indigenous peoples. And meron akong nakitang indigenous activists na nagsalita sa harap ng delegation. And we want to give that platform to Abby as well. Kasi, Abby, how do you feel about the outcomes of COP26 compared to its goals? Were the world leaders able to achieve what is necessary and just?
Such a difficult question pang Miss Universe.
Ang Miss
Thank
Universe.
you for that question.
Okay. Paano ba? Very
Miss Earth pala
valid.
tayo.
Miss Earth. Very valid yung mga sinabi ni Sophia, si Rain, si Xian, and honestly, I would like to defer to them sana kasi mas feel nila ito, mas alam nila since they have been into the negotiations for a while. Pero maybe, I mean, for indigenous peoples, at least there is some talagang very limited yung participation here kasi I've heard na pati mga parties isa lang yung pupunta sa negotiations. So yun nga, ang daming representation from other from fossil fuel companies, and for indigenous peoples, maraming nakapag effort to attend, but sa totoo lang, like per agenda item, 2 lang nakaka-attend. So it's in terms of participation and this being inclusive, it as a mechanism within the COP itself, it still has to improve, but definitely there has been a lot of effort from the different major groups, from the youth, from the women, even from persons with disabilities, from indigenous peoples, to attend and engage. So while this is a state-led process, I think maganda rin i-take into account yung efforts na ginagawa ng mga grassroots to attend and engage, and to that effect, how they influence their country delegations. Maybe there's some good influence. And actually, yeah, I've heard of Parabukas, and they have been very instrumental in environmental processes in helping the Philippine delegation come up with its positions. And for indigenous peoples, kahit pa paano, like there's the local communities and indigenous peoples platform, where there's more recognition of traditional knowledge and how it needs to be documented and to be protected and promoted, and how it's so important for marginalized communities that are and most disadvantaged because of the climate crisis. To use our own knowledge and our own systems and to assert our rights so that we can address the climate crisis. So hindi ko sinagot yung tanong. I don't know. Siguro in a very I'm going to sound arrogant. Pero I guess in a way it's a fail because there's still a lot of problems, but that doesn't mean that we should stop, right? We should always keep improving every year, and even if we do achieve the 4 goals we should always still try to improve, right? How we protect our planet and the people who live in this planet. Pang Miss Universe talaga. Miss Earth. Okay, thank you.
Ayan, pero thank you so much for your insights, Abby, no? And of course, we really appreciate you being with us this afternoon kasi the narratives that you carry as part of our indigenous community is really important to be heard in this, not only in this platform, pero kung pwede pa nga, di ba, COP next year. Ayan, nagyayaan na pa COP. Di ba? Like, all of your voices here in the room, ito yung dapat napapakinggan in spaces nga ng COP, which is really in time for us now to talk about inclusion. Kasi we've been talking about, how this COP26 is somewhat a failure because we're talking about business as usual because, in terms of representation, kulang, and only a privileged few yung nakakapunta because of different factors. So now it's time for us to talk about inclusion because the very title of our episode says it all. Not voiceless, but unheard. Lalo na ang ating Filipino youth present at COP26, hindi sila nagsawa at hindi talaga tayo magsasawa na lumaban para sa climate justice araw-araw sa mga strike at kung saan natin magagawa. Pero sadly, hindi kasama dito ang mga negotiation table ng world leaders na isinerado this year sa mga observers dahil sa COVID-19 restrictions. Unlike previous years kung saan dapat talaga iniimbita sila. Maraming delegates ang hindi rin nakarating sa Glasgow dahil sa vaccine inequality, lalo na mula sa Global South at sa mga rehiyon na itinituring na mapa o most affected people and areas.
Hindi lang sa pag-organize ng COP26 naging issue ang lack of inclusion and representation. Kahit ng ating official national delegation ay walang representative galing sa youth sector, and if nakita niyo yung 12, parang 12 sila. Walang climate change commission. So yeah. Pero dahil palaban tayo, hindi naman mapipigilan ng ating youth sa pagtitipon at paggawa ng unofficial delegation.
So, tanungin natin ang ating mga guests. How does the state inclusion and representation from other COPs compare to this COP, dubbed the most inclusive COP ever? And what about the lack of representation from the youth and other important sectors in the country delegation of the Philippines? Ayan, Abby, let's start naman with you, no?
Okay. Uh, ayun nga, actually, I kind of jumped the gun a while ago already. Siguro, so, yeah, maganda yung sinabi mo kanina na will not, aside from yung disparity in terms of yung mga observer representation sa mismong negotiating table, also yung the region, yung global south and global north. So there's still yung issue nga ng ano pa rin to, ng resources and budget. Kasi of course, yung mga nasa global north, mas marami silang budget kaysa yung mga from the global south. So, yeah. In terms of at least for indigenous peoples, there is an indigenous caucus, and I've seen ang dami ring indigenous youth who are there, and it makes me very happy and very proud. And they have actually been the ones who were also active in mobilizing, not only on the blue zone, kasi yung blue zone daw yung sa negotiators only, but also I think the green zone yung for the observers and for the public. So while there needs to be improvement in terms of inclusivity pa rin. I think yung effort naman from the different groups are there, and we can see na and we should continue this effort even if at the at the COP itself it's a bit difficult to get in, so we should still push for inclusivity.
Okay, thank you, Abby. And I agree with you. Pero I just want to highlight what you mentioned, Tina, indigenous knowledge. Kasi yung indigenous knowledge, medyo mahirap siyang i-publish as a scientist kasi it's qualitative. So sana i-consider nila yon, yung indigenous stories, yung stories ng mga tribes natin. It's actually valuable and it can back up the quantitative data that we have. So let's jump to Xian. Xian, how would you respond to this question?
Right. Being dubbed as the most inclusive COP ever, okay. Like, I don't care. Call it the most inclusive one. Don't call it the most inclusive one. The question is, ano ba yung standard natin on inclusivity? Because if we're just going to say na yung standard natin is the previous year or the previous COPs, na alam naman natin na hindi talaga inclusive in the first place, edi tayo ang saya-saya natin na, oh, it's the most inclusive COP ever. Pero like, is it still inclusive? That's the main question there. So, kanina, paulit-ulit na natin na mention yon, nasan ba yung mga activists dun sa negotiating table? Greta Thunberg, okay, which is the face of the climate ngayon. Like, I'm not saying naman na we should all like look up to Greta and say na siya talaga yung magsasave sa atin lahat. Pero like, siya yung pinakasikat. Okay, we have to admit that na siya yung pinakasikat na climate activist ngayon. Nasan siya? So kung yung pinakasikat hindi nakapasok, paano pa yung everyone else na hindi sikat? Lalo na yung marginalized sector. Diba? Yung indigenous people, fisher folk, farmers from the different countries, especially the global south, nakapasok ba sila dyan? Were they actually even given access? Like, alam ba nila na may COP? Kasi yung, kunyari, Pilipinas alone, ang Pilipinas ba, nag-effort ba tayo na kumausap sa mga sektor dito sa bansa natin? Tapos, idalin sila sa COP. Kasi nga alam naman natin na one of the major issues here is money. Diba? Ang global south, mahirap na nga tayo. Paano pa yung marginalized sector na nasa global south? Paano sila makakapunta ng COP? Wala pang vaccine yung ibang mga tao dito sa Pilipinas because of the slow vaccine rollout. So yung mga ganitong bagay, we have to take this into consideration to actually, masasabi ba talaga nating inclusive siya? Kasi wala tayong kapag sabi natin na most inclusive COP siya, wala naman siyang meaning kung ang basis mo nga lang is yung mga hindi naman talaga siya, mga hindi naman inclusive na COP before. So, yeah, hopefully magbago siya kasi kahit dito pa lang sa Pilipinas, kita natin na, sige, may mga tao tayo na padala. Kunyari sa YACAP, may 3 kaming members na nandun sa COP ngayon. Pero, anong nagawa nila? Like, sige, people's COP, andun sila. Every day, may media interview. Kasi lagi pa ulit-ulit yung media interview sa kanila. Pero like, are we actually listening to them? Or are we just using them for clout or for ano na? Ay, ito yung sinasabi ng kabataan. Matapos, is there anything coming out of what we are actually saying? So, yeah, kung ito yung most inclusive COP ever, sana yung susunod na COP, inclusive, period. Like, yun lang. Thank you.
Wow, that is very, ano no, ang daming pasabog ni Xian. I don't know any other adjective to call it, ano, but that's very, if we have probably enough more time, para ang daming kailangan natin i-dissect in terms of talking about inclusivity, not only in terms of inclusivity sa representation, but also like access to this policy making meetings and you know, because we call it high level meetings, pero yun nga, high level meetings for who, and if we can send representatives, are we really listening to them? Kasi I think it goes back to our point kanina, no, na parang this has been time and time again na pinapaulit. Before Greta Thunberg, I saw a video, probably it's in YouTube still, ng meron ding bata na nag-speak nung sa Rio na COP. Tapos, eto, we have a new face na naman ng climate activists. Pareho lang naman yung sinasabi natin. People over profit. People and planet over profit. Ayon. So, thank you very much, Xian, no? Perhaps we can hear now from Rain. Rain?
Yeah, actually, I agree with Sian na parang ang pangit nga talaga ng baseline na yung previous COPs ang magiging indicator natin na this would be the most inclusive of all the COPs. Parang, ito na. So, ang baba pala ng standards ninyo. So, yun, parang talaga maging challenger nito, especially na nakikita na with the yung internet natin, na kung saan marami na rin nagkaklamor bakit ganito yung pag-handle sa COP. Isa na dito yung nabanggit rin ni Ruzzel kanina na yung vaccine inequality. Tapos parang late lang sinolusyonan pero kahit alam na yung problema. Tapos nasabi rin yung pag nandun nga kayo pero hindi naman maka-access mismo sa decision making kasi wala naman sa blue zone as what Ate Abby mentioned earlier. I will also want to show another perspective kung bakit hindi inclusive talaga itong COP pagdating naman sa accessibility for persons with disabilities. Lalo na isa sa mga Israel na minister nila na naka-wheelchair, hindi siya nakapunta sa first day ng COP ata or one of the days ng COP kasi yung van na dumating sa kanya, hindi kaya makaano ng wheelchair. And ang isa pang problema dito, sige sabihin natin hindi kayo part nung proceedings, parang gusto nyo lang makinig, walang adequate British Sign Language interpreters and nag-apologize rin mismo yung COP26 dito. So bukod dun sa youth involvement and sa other considerations na mayroon to make it inclusive, makikita rin talaga na yung persons with disability as a sector, parang hindi rin sila, neglected rin sila in a way. And parang gusto ko lang rin ipasok na the persons with disabilities, sila rin yung ilan sa mga tao na mahirapan kapag lumikas, kapag may mga trahedya. Yung mga taong merong physical man o cognitive na kapansanan. Tapos pagdating naman doon, nabanggit rin ni Zia na parang pinapakinggan everyday yung media para may interview na youth pero nakikinig pa. Yun. Kung nabanggit rin ni Sian kaninang greenwashing, meron rin tayong youth washing kung saan ini-invite ng mga kabataan para magsalita, privilege speech dito, privilege speech doon, interview dito, interview doon. Pero pagdating naman sa decision making, wala sila, hindi sila present, hindi narinig yung boses. And parang ganito na youth washing, parang pampaganda ng o bango ng pangalan. Na, o baka nga, ito yung sabihin natin, definition nila ng inclusivity. Nakapag-invite kami, nagsalita sila, okay, inclusive na tayo. So yun, talagang kailangan rin natin talaga tingnan yung definition and ayusin.
Okay, thank you, Rain. Pero personally, I really appreciate your health perspective kasi lumalawak yung natin, yung mindset natin. Hindi lang siya environmental issue, hindi lang siya poverty, finance, pati yung health included. And yun, yung mga PWDs natin, kailangan din kasi silang ipasok or include kung gusto talaga nila maging inclusive. So hopefully, for the next COPs or next policy engagements, dapat pati yung PWDs bigyan din ng right of parang way. Wag natin hatiin yung blue zone and green zone. Parang dapat one zone lang tayong lahat. Okay. So finally naman, for Sophia, you're the last one for this time. So yeah, good luck.
Thank you. Okay, sige. I think we're all in unison na it's very exclusive, like evidential. It's very white, it's very privileged, and lack of adequate representation of all sectors, especially from the global south and indigenous peoples, people with disability. But I think I'm not surprised na because for me, COP has always been exclusive to the global south and these people with disability because it's so expensive to fly out of the country and to go to this usually first world countries just to attend a 2 weeks conference. Like you really need to pool enough resources to find lodging, airfare, food expenses, per diem if you also need. So parang saan tayo kukuha ng pera nun if our resources right now is being used to adapt to climate change and like to basically survive the next typhoon that might hit the country, diba? So it's very tragic lang here in this COP26 because hindi nila na-bridge yung ganong gap. And I think they didn't even utilize yung yung opportunity to use the virtual to other people like those na nasa observer status lang if COVID-19 restriction natin. Like that would be easy. Like I hate like comparing Convention on Biological Diversity because it's virtual and you just need to submit like registration to the secretariat and then you can have observer status and then you follow the discussions. That's easy. Bakit like hindi nila nagawa yun sa UNFCCC? Like bakit hindi nila kaya siyang gawin ganun? Like we already have the opportunity. And nakita naman natin na sinisimulan na ng presidency na going online. Like there are a lot of broadcasts. Sabi nga ni Xian kanina, ito yung COP na ang daming chika, ang daming pa live stream kanya. Pero bakit hindi nila ginawa sa actual negotiations kung saan yun yung pinaka-important? And I would like also to go down on the importance of attendance during COPs because may policy sa COP na silence means yes. So if you don't raise your objections timely, hindi na nila yung papakinggan. So kung hindi na-raise ng mga bansa yung contentions nila, wala. Papasok na yung word even though it's very unfavorable to this developing countries. So that's very important. And hindi yun na-address ng COP this year. So dito talaga sobrang feel for me yung COP26. And for the state representation, the Philippines representation, so we have 19 delegates going there, headed by the DOF. Ang thoughts ko dito is sad for me because like they know that we have local youth action leading up to COP. Like we submitted documents, like the local conference of the youth. We submitted documents to them. Pero why didn't they include the discussion na, uy, magpapadala ng delegate yung Philippines? Meron ba kayong gustong isama? Like, there's nothing to that point. So ano to, like noted lang yung mga sinad namin sa inyong documents, pero there's no action after. So ganun lang tayo. Pero parang, sige, I think we'll just maniningil after ng everything. But in its lack of state representation in the Philippines, we don't even know if they're attending the negotiations because we haven't seen enough information about it aside from that from the Santiago network and then the statements of the head of delegation. So like any updates, feel Del, and then if you have read the post of Action Klima because they're in the conference right now and walang parang discussion among the NGO CSO observer status delegation of Philippines there and the official state party delegation of the Philippines, which is very unfortunate because in the history of climate negotiations, especially for the Philippines, sobrang tight ng connection ng NGO and the state delegation because NGOs always provide technical support to the government. And bakit ngayon hindi nila ni-utilize yung ganung opportunity? Why? Like, cooperate, collaborate. Bakit hindi natin ito ginagawa? Like, that's sad. So, ayun. Medyo madaming rant on that part because...
It's okay. It's good now that we're having this conversation nga to get it out, because change only happens when we when we see this as it is, so that we can improve for the next COP, no? And so far, based on our grades for today, kind of fail yung COP26 in terms of different factors, inclusion and access, and different other inequalities that's present, currently present, and also historically present also, no? Yun nga, Sophia wrapped it up nicely in terms of saying na, yeah, it's sad actually na hindi ka na shock na ganito siya. Kasi parang hindi na siya shocking kasi we've talked about this many times also, but we're still hopeful that hopefully someone out there is listening to our voices this afternoon. So thank you so much to our esteemed guest. That ends the first segment of the show. And before we proceed to the next segment, here are a few reminders. Kendrick?
Okay, thank you, Roz. So before we go dun sa ating reminders, continue commenting dun sa section natin kasi we'll be doing a shout out after this series of announcements. So comment lang po kayo sa ating mga Facebook Live. I think after the discussion yung kanina natin, ang daming hearts, lalo na after the PWD. So yeah, comment down below sa ating FB Live. So first, for the first announcement, let me say congratulations to the 552 newly minted Pinoy Climate Reality Leaders. And welcome to the Climate Reality Leadership Corps. And to our community as well of Pinoy Climate Reality Leaders, working together towards a just and sustainable transition for the Philippines. We look forward to meeting all of you this month during our onboarding session with the Philippine branch. We are excited as well to support your climate initiatives, connect you to our network of like-minded persons and organizations like this one. We have 5 like-minded organizations, and collaborate with you in communicating the urgency and solvability of the climate crisis. And for our second reminder,
in line with that, the different clusters of the Climate Reality Philippines will hold their onboarding sessions on November 23 and 24, 2021. Watch out for an email from the branch on the details of your onboarding session.
Okay, and for our third announcement, do you want to be on the planet's nice list this year? Then let's make climate action the reason for the season. So we encourage you to think about your impacts on your holiday actions that would have on our planet, and challenge you to undertake the green acts of leadership, whether you're using zero waste Christmas decors, being mindful of your food waste, buying dairy-free treats, or turning off your lights. We invite you to share to your fellow climate reality leaders on how you will be celebrating the holidays in the green way by joining the 8th community meet on November 26, 2021, Friday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Get ready with your eco-friendly ideas and bring your drink of choice and dress in a holiday costume. Check your inbox for the email on how you can join our community meet on November 26.
And another announcement from us is that the long wait is over. The winners for the nationwide round of the Mobility Awards will be announced on November 25. Stay tuned to our social media pages for updates. Mobility Awards is organized by Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities, the Climate Reality Project Philippines, 350 Pilipinas, Manila Moves, and Pinay Bike Commuter.
Okay, we are calling as well all climate advocates, writers, and poets to join When Is Now, a global creative collaboration for urgent climate action, organized by the AGAM Agenda, Climate Vulnerable Forum, and Institute of Climate and Sustainable Cities. When Is Now is an open, evolving call for creative expression and collaboration to demand for urgent climate action. All you need is a seed of an idea, a string of words, and your willingness to share your experience as well as acknowledge and respond to other experiences on the climate crisis.
To learn more about this initiative and how you can submit poems and seeds of creative climate action in many different forms, visit whenisnow.org. Prompts and submission guidelines may be found in the submission form. You may also respond to poems that have already been contributed. Go to the exhibition space, choose a poem or image that moves you, and then create your response. You may include lines from other contributions in your own poem or visual creations. Altogether, Agam Agenda will be interweaving lines of poetry into a web that stretches across the planet, asking when and demanding now.
In addition, this year's COP26 is an eye-opener on the need for young people to actively participate in climate discussions and collectively use our voice to push for genuine inclusion and representation. That's why Kids for Kids, Project Pulo, and the Climate Reality Project Philippines is inviting all Filipino youths to join our open thread about climate policy in the Philippines. Now, more than ever, do we need to understand how our leaders and policymakers will be moving forward and ultimately bring climate justice for people, planet, and the Philippines.
To join the Telegram group, you may scan the QR code flashed on your screen or go to bit.ly/CPPH Our discussions here will remain non-partisan, but of course on the side of climate justice for the most vulnerable communities always, and with indigenous people and local communities as the true climate leaders of our time.
And for the Pinoy climate reality leaders watching, join the hashtag Klimatotohanan production team and help us produce the show. So kung gusto niyo mag-host, go next time. The Klimatotohanan webcast is a venue for a dialogue among Pinoy climate reality leaders and other climate advocates to deepen each other's understanding of climate change and help each other take bolder climate action.
Syempre, as part of the production team, you would be able to hone or even discover your skills and talents, may it be in hosting, writing, or designing. If you are unable to join the production team, connect with us on social media and share the episodes on your accounts. Now, let's read a few comments from our Facebook stream. Kendrick?
Okay, so let's go first kay Sir Greg Sandoy from Davao de Oro, as well as Trisha Peñaverde from Tagbilaran, Bohol. Uy, Chocolate Hills. And then we also have Rina Fiestada from Muntinlupa City, and as well as Chloe Raya from Rojas City, Capiz. So di ba we're all over talaga the Philippines. And also Katja or Katha Asioke. Are you a foreigner? Pero she's from Manila. And yeah, that's it for our Facebook comments. So let's move on to the next segment, which is pag-uusapan natin ang outcomes ng COP26 at ang iba't ibang issue na umikot sa most inclusive COP. Pag-uusapan naman natin ang pinaka-importanting topic ng discussion natin ngayon. Ano ba yung youth's role in this climate talks? So young climate justice activist Scarlett Westbrook was absolutely right when she said that the real force for change at COP isn't in the conference hall, but on the streets. While world leaders squabble over semantics, those thousands of people have gathered together to unite for climate justice. We have been outside their windows every single day of COP. We are not going to be fooled by solipsistic speeches, promising to act whilst doing the opposite.
That's absolutely right, Kendrick. The youth are absolutely crucial to placing pressure on world leaders to make the necessary actions and the right decisions. However, we can better drive these decisions and actions when we actually have a seat at the table. That's something that we've been talking about this afternoon, no? Still, the ultimate challenge is here back home. It's been said that climate movements lose momentum after every COP. So to start off this segment, our question for our guest is, with the current status of COP, what do the youth need to do to move climate action forward? Xian, maybe you can start us off.
All right. with the statement na there is a big chance na after COP mawawala na yung youth movement or the climate movement, I'd say absolutely not. Like, to be honest kami sa YACAP, like, we don't care. COP or not, we're gonna continue what we're doing. And I'm pretty sure that's the same thing with everyone else here. It's not COP who's going to decide the future of our planet. It's actually the people. Alright? So kapag binitawan na natin tong aktivismo natin, pag binitawan natin yung advocacy natin, that's when we'll lose. COP is not the ultimate decisive factor kung we're gonna save the planet or not. It's actually the ones outside. Alright? We have this thing called legal and meta-legal na actions na pwede natin gawin. For example, Sophia, mas maalam talaga sila sa legal kasi mas policy advocacy and everything. Habang kami sa YACAP, hindi kami ganun Like, we're starting to dabble into that right now, pero mas dun talaga kami sa meta-legal. Like, kapag meron kami nakikitang pangit, magrarally kami. Like, literally, we're going to scream, we're going to shout at the world leaders if they're not listening to us. What we have to remember here is hindi pwedeng isa lang. Hindi pwedeng legal lang, hindi pwedeng meta-legal lang. Kasi nasasayang yung opportunity na kung i-maximize natin yon, di ba? We can do like amazing things. That's why kung ang tinanong sa atin is ano ba yung role of the youth, all right? It's doing both. Okay, that's why we need to work together. Different organizations, different alliances need to work together towards a common goal, and it's not gonna end at COP. Okay? Ngayon, tayo, all hands on deck sa COP kasi nangyayari siya. But after COP, we're gonna continue this. It's not true yung sinabi. Like, I don't know where that came from. Maybe that's yun yung nakita na trend for the past couple of COPs. Pero I don't know. I cannot absolutely say this for everyone, but I'm pretty sure na for the people in this room, hindi kami titigil sa paglaban towards climate justice. So, yeah.
Okay, maraming salamat Xian. Thank you for highlighting that there are two types, yung legal and meta-legal, and the collaborative opportunity for these two is would bring us to a higher level on how to voice out talaga yung ating mga hinaing for climate crisis. So, going to you, Rain, what do you believe that the youth need to do to move to climate action forward?
Sorry, before I answer that, I want to clarify lang din that climate advocacy and activism includes both systems change and individual change. Both are important. However, we must not rely solely or majorly on individual change. And dun sa individual change rin kasi, that burden is placed on us and not really on the system that perpetuates our behavior. Sabihin natin, you really want to practice veganism, pero walang adequate access, like hindi available or hindi affordable yung greener alternatives, yung vegan alternatives sa'yo kumpara sa canned meat. And dapat hindi rin tayo malungkot na, ay, nakatutulong pa ako sa krisis pagklima kasi kumakain ako ng canned meat, hindi naman siya maganda para sa environment. Pero ito lang talaga afford ko. So, yun nga yung burden na pupunta sa atin. Sorry, I just wanted to respond to that kasi I saw one in the comments. Anyway, so mayroon ring deadly misconception na ang pakikibaka o protest ay anti-government. No, it's not. It's not against the government, it's against incompetence of government. Actually, dito nga rin sa Global Youth and Mayors Forum, we have mayors who themselves are activists, but their citizens are not calling them against government. Kagipat pa dito ay hindi raw tayo makabayan kasi sinisira natin ang kapwa natin. That's also wrong. Our love for our country at sa kapwa natin ay napapahayag sa ating pakikibaka. Hindi natin dinatanggap ang hindi makatarungang pagpapatakbo ng sistema. Hindi natin dinatanggap ang papalastangan sa karapatang pantao at lalong hindi natin dinatanggap ang pang-aabuso na maaaring tayo mismo ay hindi makaramdam pero nararamdaman at nararanasan ng ibang tao, lalo na sa pang-araw-araw. May lakas ang ating boses at mas mapapalikas pa to kung tayo ay magsama-samang iparating ang ating mga adhikain, ang ating mga hinanakit at ang ating mga mungkahay at demands sa mga nasa pwesto o may kapangyarihan na gumalaw. Mahalaga rin ang ating role as youth dahil tayo rin ang magmamana ng mundo as what was emphasized all throughout the session. Tayo ang susunod na henerasyon na sa pwesto at dahil dito, maaari rin tayong magaya sa mga nauna sa atin o sa mga nakatanda sa atin na hindi pinapangalagaan ng environment o yung buhay ng tao. And dahil dito sa advocacy na to, pag-engage natin sa activism and advocacy, hindi lang tayo nang i-inform ng ibang tao. We are also informed by the communities. Sabihin natin yung practices nga na mayroong pinapractice ang komunidad nila, Abi. Parang matututuhan natin, oo nga, maganda nga ito and dapat ma-employ rin natin. So, isa yan sa mga avenues na meron tayo dito sa climate advocacy, community engagement rin, kung saan both of us learn from each other. So, yun.
Yun. Thank you, Rain. At parang isang malaking yakap yung sinabi ni Rain kanina na parang hindi lang to about the individual, no? Hindi nakalagay lang sa isang individual ang pagbabago. Individual changes and also systematic changes reinforces each other. So there's a very big space for collaboration for us to do like different ways for us to help the environment. Yun nga, it's good if we have access, because really, if you have access to alternatives, greener alternatives that are not yet accessible for the rest of the society, then go we support your individual climate action also, the same way that you can also support people who are pushing for systematic changes. Hindi siya one or another, parang hindi, ang mundo ay hindi black and white nga, no? So napakagandang thought nun. And the other thing that Rain shared, but I think one of the things that we want to also hear from Abby also, kasi Abby, if we may, you're next in line. So, but like what Rain shared about us learning from indigenous tradition and your relationship with the earth, no? So maybe that's something that we can hear from this afternoon, if that's something that you want to share also in terms of the youth involvement in moving climate action forward. So Abby?
Right. Thank you so much. And thank you for giving this space for me to talk about it. Kasi it's really, this is a really important aspect of our identity as well as Indigenous people. So me as an Indigenous youth growing up in a city in our ancestral land, but that has been highly urbanized, learning our Indigenous knowledge is really important for our identity, and not only for our identity, but also for protecting the remaining like green and blue spaces in our community and in our areas. So I think we always say things such as we always assert like our rights as Indigenous peoples, which is rightly so under the law. But I think one thing we also have to emphasize is that with the rights comes our duties and responsibilities to our lands, territories, and resources. And I think this emphasizing this relationship with our lands, territories, and resources, our relationship to nature, it's not something that is, it's not something that is only by Indigenous people's rights. Everybody has a relationship with nature, and I think what we can learn from Indigenous peoples is how we can get closer to it, closer to what the fundamental things in life are. Anyway, humaba na yung sinabi ko. I just wanted also like to emphasize, which is a big issue that Indigenous peoples are facing right now, and that where youth are also very active in, and they are active in calling this out, is that there are a lot of injustices happening to a lot of Indigenous peoples defending their lands and territories. And we know a lot of there are a lot of headline issues on this. The Kaliwa Dam, there's also the Apayao Dam here up north, and etc. And I think we should, as youth, we should continue calling out these injustices, continue calling out these injustices, calling for accountability of those who are perpetrating these kinds of issues on Indigenous peoples. And should I answer also about the what actions youth should take after COP?
Yeah, you can add on. You can add
Yeah.
on that.
Medyo na ano na ako. Masyado akong excited. I can't. My words are stumbling out of my mouth.
We're here to listen, Abby.
Yeah, and it's really important to learn the different kinds of ways of learning and knowing. So I'm glad na si Kendrick mentioned about connecting science with Indigenous knowledge, partnering, I guess, our researches and etc. Because in many, not only in the Philippines, but also globally, it has been found that there are indigenous knowledge practices that are actually backed by science. Like for example, here in the north, we have sustainable practices for rice irrigation, for example, that has been acknowledged and lauded as well by the different from NCA, by the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, by DNR, by DAR, and etc. And it's important that we promote this, and that youth also continue this tradition and revitalize it. Now where was I? I guess it's just nice to note that in the Philippines, there's a lot of there's traction for us to really continuing the movement and advocacy here locally. So we have the landmark case of Oposa versus Fortune, was it? Please correct me na lang. Those who are yung mas sa legal na. Yeah, sorry, Oposa versus Factoran. On intergenerational responsibility, and then we have CHR now accounting and monitoring and trying to get accountability from mga fossil fuel companies, and then at the international level, the Human Rights Council acknowledge the right to a healthy environment. So I think these are some developments locally and internationally that we can build upon and continue monitoring and asserting to the different consultations, different plans, different avenues where we are given space to engage with. Yeah, I
Okay.
guess.
Yes, Abby, and
Thank you, sorry.
ang dami mo nasabi. Yeah, that's very okay. Pero just a quick commercial kasi you mentioned that I'm actually inclined dun sa indigenous knowledge because I was trained by my mentor and advisor. So, kasi human dimensions laboratory kami sa CESAM. So we really have to factor in yung indigenous knowledge and the stories. So we want you to be part of the community talaga in talking about climate change. And yung sa climate justice, we should really defend yung territories nyo kasi that's your own. So it's part of the climate justice and we will fight for defending your territories. Okay, so going to Sophia, how would you respond about what do the youth need to do to move climate action forward?
Like after COP, no? I think madaming kailangang pag-reflectan after COP. Like everyone should take a pause, evaluate, and rest. Kasi ang dami natin expectations leading up to COP and actual COP. So kailangan natin tignan kung na-achieve ba natin yun. And ano yung nangyari during COP. Like after all, yung parang may rush ka na, eto na yung COP, eto dapat yung gagawin. Kasi 2 weeks yan na super packed ng events and you're just going day by day. So you also need to step out and look at it as like eto siya, tapos nandito ka sa labas. Sorry, kailangan ng visual representation. So parang kailangan mo siyang tignan from an outside perspective, and after you evaluate whatever happened, syempre yung youth action naman hindi siya nawawala. And we just need to re-strategize, replan our actions. Kasi may, for sure, mayroong mga actions tayo na hindi nag-work at may mga nag-work. And we need to identify kung paano pa siya i-hone para mas maging effective yung campaigns natin. And as Xian mentioned kanina, like the two like actions, like the legal and then the legal. So that would also fit in that. Now, we always need to evaluate and plan out kung anong gagawin natin next. And I would also just want to say na it's not just the youth who should sustain the climate action forward after COP. But hello, government leaders, kayo yung nandyan na ngayon sa negotiating table and kayo yung mismo gumagawa ng batas. So mas malaking burden sa inyo to sustain the action, because what we can do as youth is to encourage you and to see our perspective kung bakit important tong mga ganitong bagay. And if you're not going to act, parang it's all fruitless, but itutuloy pa rin natin yung laban, syempre. So, mas malaki lang yung obligation for me na mas maging active and proactive yung government natin in these discussions. So, ayun. And siguro, outside COP and like for a long term, since palapit na rin yung election, is to vote for legislators and public officers who embody and align with our climate goals. Kasi sila rin yung may chance na maging part ng Philippine delegation pagdating ng COP. So if they're not there, they can create the right environment to allow genuine climate advocates to be there at COP. So like we also need to look at it at like a systems level na how people represent, how the Philippines is represented pagdating sa COP. And of course, our campaigns on the ground na kailangan pa rin natin i-sustain alongside with that.
Okay.
Lastly pala.
Go. You can
Sorry.
continue.
Last, because ang daming na-draft, na-develop na statements ang youth. Like we have LCOY statements, COY statements, and then the Youth for Climate Manifesto, the one that was drafted, yung event that was led by Italy. So sana hindi siya matapos as statements and manifesto, but maging action siya. Mahugutan siya ng action ng mga youth. Kasi sayang yung effort na binuhos and brains na binuhos para ma-develop to. So better na i-operationalize natin siya, i-implement, and let's collaborate with our government, different NGOs, para magawa siya. And like, NGOs are always there to support us. Like Ardentitas, Luntitas are always there to support and mentor us along the way. So kung ano man mangyari after COP, like if hindi ma-reach yung expectations, sana hindi tayo mawalan ng hope, pero sana mas mag-ignite siya, mas lost for words, pero
Kaya mo yan.
Go, Sophia.
i-burn niya yung passion ng youth palalo to sustain our climate action. Hindi ko mahanap yung proper Tagalog.
Right word.
Ayun.
Yeah, okay. Alab ang Tagalog ng game.
I think yun, basta ganun.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. So, pero I want to highlight what you mentioned na parang rest is really part of the process. For the past 2 weeks, parang tutok na tutok yung youth dun sa nangyayari din sa COP. Pero it might lead to burnout kasi nga, we're really hoping, we're really parang pushing kung ano yung kailangan nating ma-achieve for the statements or policies na ilalabas ng COP later. Pero yeah, we have to step back, rest, digest what happened, and then move forward kung paano natin ma-achieve talaga yung mga pinangako nila. And then, bouncing off that discussion for the final question of this episode, kasi medyo, tigyan nyo, madali na yung lugar ko. Could you share with us what's next for your respective youth organizations and existing climate actions post-COP? So how can our different youth organizations collaborate to continue driving the work of the climate movement towards a just and sustainable world that stays below 1.5 degrees Celsius? So let's start again with Xian.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? May nag-chat pala.
Sorry, sige.
Tinignan ko
Okay.
yung chat
Okay, so wait lang, may nag-ano rin.
Okay.
Wag mo nagsasala. Could you share with us the next move for your respective youth organizations and your existing climate actions post-COP? So how can different youth organizations collaborate to continue driving the work of the climate movement towards a just and sustainable world that stays below 1.5 degrees Celsius?
All right. Sorry again for the chat kasi may makulit. Char. Pero sige, to answer this question, actually kami sa YACAP, we have 3 things. So from local to national to international na plans na ilalarga namin after COP. So on a local level, actually we are still ongoing sa aming climate education series na on ground. So ito ay mas para sa mga grassroots sector. So we're creating modules for farmers, creating modules for fisher folk. Tapos, ginagawa namin yun together. Kasi we know that we are not messiahs. We don't know everything. And actually, there are things na mas alam pa nila kaysa sa amin when it comes to how to actually articulate the climate crisis to the basic sectors. Kasi usually, when we talk about the climate crisis, very scientific. We're not saying that's bad ha. Pero like, minsan sa masa, hindi naman yun easily digestible na we're going to talk about climate tipping points, we're going to talk about runaway climate change. Kailangan natin yon bit-bitin sa kanila. How do we communicate the science to the basic sector. So yun yung ongoing na ginagawa namin on a local level. So we're having integrations as well with farmers, fisher folk. Like pumupunta kami doon, we're staying there for quite some time to actually learn from them as well, in the sense na kunyari ako before, I don't know how to articulate climate science in the sense na how it affects them. Pero doon mismo, dahil nag-integrate kami, nakita ko na, oh my gosh, umuulan today, so hindi kami makapag-dry ng bigas. So masasayang, tatapon na lang siya. And me personally, that's like, ako yung nadadagdagan din ako ng information aside from me helping them with articulating the science as well. So that's the local thing. On the national scale, of course, continue holding accountability sa ating government officials. Pero of course, given na meron tayong 2022 elections na upcoming, isa sa mga sisimulan din namin is yung climate agenda. So ito, sa mga nandito sa call na to, tsaka dyan sa mga nanonood sa ating online, we want you to be part of the creation as well of the climate agenda, in the sense na let's all talk about ano ba yung gusto nating makita sa susunod natin na mga national leaders. Okay, tapos once we have created this climate agenda for 2022, doon na natin pag-usapan, are we going to endorse certain candidates or not? Kasi while we all understand na many of our organizations is non-partisan, mahirap kasi na hindi na tayo mag-take ng stand. Kasi paano kapag next year ang manalo ay mga tsaka? Like, we don't have to say who they are, but that's the thing. Okay, so kailangan meron tayong basis una. That's why we need to create the agenda. And then based from that agenda, dun tayo kung sino ba yung mga, kung hindi man directly support, like meron tayong total na i-X na, okay, ito, sobrang X niya sa climate, so wag na siya. So, yeah, that's it for the national na soon. And then for the international one, global climate strikes are forever naman nandyan yan. Every year, minsan 3, minsan 4. Dati 1 lang yan eh. Pero ewan ko ba, na-realize ng everyone na di tayo pinakikinggan eh. Ulit-ulitin natin siya. So most probably, ang next climate strike would happen ng early next year, like first quarter of next year. But yeah, stay tuned na lang din for that. Hopefully, we get to see you guys as well dun sa ating global climate strike, both online and on ground. So yeah, many things upcoming. So to everyone watching here and to all our friends from different organizations here, let's all work together towards our common goal, which is climate justice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Xian. Very exciting things happening now with your initiatives for local, national, and of course, international also. It's nice that this synergy of the different levels of our initiatives. No? And for anyone watching, yun nga, the purpose of this, us sharing the different initiatives of YACAP and the other organizations that were here this afternoon is, baka kung gusto niyo mag-collaborate or partner for your climate justice advocacies and initiatives, feel free to reach out to them. So next up, Rain.
Hello. So specifically for C40 Global Youth and Mayors Forum, we will be meeting next week pa. And actually one of the proposed agenda ng meeting natin would be the COP26, proceedings ng COP26. And beforehand, we circulated a joint statement by youth and mayors kung saan parang ni-raise na rin namin yung mga demands namin together with mayors sa COP presidency. And I believe parang na-circulate rin siya during pre-COP events. So, pagdating naman dito sa collectively working together ng organizations here in the Philippines, nasabi kanina ni Sophia yung engagement with civil society. So, talagang kailangan natin paigtingin ang ating pakikipag-unayan sa isa't isa sa mga NGOs natin. Sabihin natin, sige, mag-name drop ako ng Oceana. Sige, isa na yon. Sige, sabihin rin natin 350.org. So, yung mga NGOs na matagal na dito sa climate advocacy na to, and mga NGOs na nag-help sa skills development ng mga youth leaders para yung mga youth leaders na to pagkatapos ng program nila with these NGOs, ma-replicate naman nila sa local communities nila at dahil dito, mas magiging sustainable ang movement natin. So, maging mas aktibo rin dapat tayo at ang mga organization sa pag-claim ng space sa matalakayan na diskusyong pinamumunuan ng mga opisyales. Sabihin natin, bakit may pag-uusapan sila regarding sabihin natin NDC or Nationally Determined Contributions, pero walang naupo or parang hiningi from us, tayo dapat ang mag-contact sila sa kanila. Kailangan ng representative from this sector or that sector or from the youth sector. So kapag hindi sila nag-reach out, tayo dapat yung mag-reach out. Pero ang mas mainam talaga sila yung mag-reach out para makita rin natin na sineseryoso nila yung problema at parang hindi lang tayo in-invite para basta-basta lamang. So yun. And maaari rin tayo makipag-partner sa mga iba't ibang mga local youth development councils, mga sangguniang kabataan, or sa mga mayors mismo. Lalo na dito, sige sabihin natin sa C40. Yung mga mayors talaga namin sobrang receptive sila sa mga ideas ng kabataan. And as mentioned ko kanina, sila na rin mismo parang ilan sa mga suggestions trinatry na rin nila i-implement sa local context nila. So sana mangyari rin yan dito sa Pilipinas, hindi lang sabihin natin sa Brazil or sa Amerika, makita yung ganyan, pero dito rin natin mismo sa Pilipinas. So yun.
Okay, maraming salamat rin. And thank you for your initiative for relaying our voices to your parang local chief executives. So let's go naman to Abby. How do you see your org, either UNYAB or TEBTEBA on moving forward?
Yes, thank you. As for the UN Youth Advisory Board, I think maganda na na-identify yung mga, as we have been mentioning na dapat, malawak ang stakeholder engagement. So na-mention na ni, I think si Xian yung sa grassroots, and then na-mention ni Rain a while ago yung sa mayors. For the UN Youth Advisory Board naman, ang who we can connect with are the UN agencies. So taking off mga different advocacy targets because we can help each other in bringing forward the voices of the youth. So the climate agenda is something that we have been bringing forward in our discussions with the UN agencies, and we will continue to do so. And I don't know, hopefully we can find something next year where we can have I don't know, a dialogue or a discussion, a wider discussion with youth. But as with TEBTEBA, definitely we will be continuing engaging in the different policy processes, not only for indigenous peoples, but also for indigenous youth, indigenous women, and etc. I think it's also nice to note, kasi na-mention na rin yung mayors, is that in the Philippines we have, which is I think a bit unique worldwide, the Sangguniang Kabataan. So if there's also a way, we should also connect with our local Sangguniang Kabataan, our chairpersons, our council, and see if they can also put in the table our agendas and issues, especially our this one on the climate crisis. That's all. Thank you.
And thank you, Abby. And take it home for us, Sophia.
So moving forward, after COP, basically we'll try to make Parabukas is like developing a communications material to digest kung ano ba yung laman ng final COP decision. So we're just waiting for the final document so that we can lay down what are the important points that was mentioned there, and if possible, like explain why are these points important for the Philippines. Because medyo like technical syempre yung document, and we want everyone to understand ano yung importance ng document, and like para saan ba tong, and basically para saan ba tong COP26, and ano tong document na nire-release nila after, and any updates after COP. And then siguro aside from that, well, Parabukas is really working on to improve or like broaden its reach to other youth organizations. So we're really open to collaborations, and siguro the biggest youth event or engagement that we have is the local conference of the youth that we had like around late September. So I think there are talks if like we're going to continue it the next year. So like open call if you still like want to support it or you want to be engaged on how to plan this out, because local conference of the youth or LCOY is already part of the UNF process, because local conference of the youth are approved by the local conference of the youth working group under YUNGO, and YUNGO is the official children and youth constituency of the UNFCCC, so may direct access to that point. So if you're part of that like work, like your voices would surely be heard. And also if you want to be part of YUNGO, we can just check their website. The application forms to be part are always open because they encourage everyone to be part of that network. And there are a lot of streams of work that you can like venture into, like they're about the nationally determined contributions, women, oceans, climate education. So we'll just check on that stuff. And there's a lot of international work also that's happening that like let's be involved.
Okay, maraming salamat, Sophia. So for me, ang keywords for this question is engage and collaborate. And that wraps up our panel discussion. Thank you once again to our esteemed guests who tackled the importance and various issues around COP26 so well and have shown once again, as the youth so consistently and passionately do, what living on climate looks like. I like to believe the tremendous expectations on COP26 stems from the youth's vigilance and demand for this COP to have a real and genuine outcomes.
Yes, Kendrick, and to lift the line from the unity statement of young Filipinos to COP26, we, the youth, are the most important stakeholders in COP26 because this event will decide the future that we will have. With that, may I now call Jacques from Youth Strike for Climate Philippines, who co-lead the development of this statement. Jacques, could you share with us what this statement is all about?
Okay, hello and thank you for the opportunity. Maraming salamat din po sa ating mga speakers kanina. Marami rin ako natutunan. Actually, I was taking down notes ng mga nasabi nila earlier and it was profound, napaka well-rooted itong mga nasabi nila about the COP26 and what's next, what's after COP, di ba? So, on the unity statement, so actually this statement is a reflection of the sentiment of the Filipino youth. We have collaborated with youth organizations, we have opened a call, and then there were a lot who engaged with us in co-creating this statement. No, it's a sentiment of the Filipino youth in the global south, where we are part of. It calls out the problems of COP26. Nabanggit niyan kanina, which is actually more of a problematic event than an event that will provide solutions to all our problems, diba? So nagsilbi pa siyang problema kaysa sa solusyon. Pero yun nga, hopefully mas mag-focus tayo dun sa mga solutions na nasabi nila and mas paigtingin natin yung call na maging urgent sana yung action nila dun sa mga nasabi nila, yung mga promises nila. Well, in summary, we try to report the problem on representation, nabanggit na rin to kanina, participation, and more importantly, the accountability and reparation. And after reporting, we also specified some calls to action. Recommendations kumbaga, di ba? Yung recommendations nanggaling na sa kabataan. Kailangan lang nila ito pakinggan. And we also had, yun nga, itong nabanggit ni Ate Sophia kanina, yung ELCOY na nagbunga rin ito, panawagan din ito ng mga kabataan na kailangan din pakinggan, kailangan i-take note ng mga nasa government natin, di ba? And at itong mga recommendations natin dito, medyo naka-focus siya sa loss and damages since our convener, Sir Jefferson Estela, is part of a group on loss and damages na nandun sa UK. At ngayon, last day na, so pauwi na rin sila along with the other Philippine delegates from the youth na nandoon ngayon. And the statement has two parts. One that is addressed to the global north leaders and the latter is addressed actually to the Philippine government. And we are trying right now to reach out to the Philippine delegation na hanggang ngayon ay parang out of touch pa rin, na hindi pa rin naaabot, ayaw nga nila makipag-ugnayan din sa mga civil society organizations ngayon na nandun sila. So we will try our best to reach out and provide this unity statement to the Philippine delegation. Now, una sa nabanggit nating calls nga ay yung representation and participation. Then this statement highlighted the call for genuine representation of the global south. And we know how vaccine inequality, nabanggit na rin to kanina, it disproportionately affects the planet and it also disabled the global south representatives nga to produce outputs, to be in the conference, di ba? I mean, alam natin na hoarded nga yung mga vaccines nga sa sa Global North at sila sa Global North may kakayahan makapag-produce mga vaccines sa kinakailangan ng buong planeta. Kaya ang nangyayari, ipinagkakait ang mga bakunang ito sa Global South na bansa, kung kaya naman ay malaki ang mga proportions nga ng mga unvaccinated mula roon. Kaya mahirap para sa kanila na makarating din sa event. Dagdag mo pa roon yung mga problema sa visa, problema sa, nabanggit na rin to kanina, di ba, dahil nasa first world country ang COP26, mahirap din gumastos dahil medyo mahal, may mataas din yung cost of living doon sa kanilang lugar. And wait lang, sorry. Ayan, something came up. At alam naman nating lahat, syempre, na maliit lang yung ambag ng mga Global South nations sa pagtaas ng carbon emissions ng buong planeta, pero sila yung una nagiging biktima ng climate crisis at kabilang na rin dyan yung Pilipinas. Sino nga ba yung pinakamalaking emitter natin ng carbon emissions, di ba? Or hindi lang carbon emissions, pati methane at iba pang greenhouse gases, di ba? Hindi ba ang Global North din naman? Na paulit-ulit na rin natin sinasabi yan at dito na rin pumapasok yung second call natin on accountability and reparation. Paano natin ngayon mapapanagot ang mga Global North na bansa kung wala tayong representatives from the Global South na dapat sana nandun sa COP26. Although there are some from the Global South, pero not everyone is genuinely represented. Hindi lahat ng bansa ay nakarating. Kung meron mang kung nakarating man sila, iilan lang sila, hindi masyadong malaki yung kanilang delegation. When in fact, ang daming sectors na kailangan isaalang-alang, para rito. Dito tinitingnan din natin kung paano natin sila masisingil, paano natin masisingil ang Global North, 'di ba? So, paano natin sila masisingil kung wala roon yung dapat na maniningil? So, ang point here dun sa ating reparation, dapat sana ituring ito bilang kabayaran o parang danyos kumbaga sa mga kagagawa ng Global North. Hindi kasi ang nangyayari parang nagmumukha ngang una, pwede nga loan, and pangalawa, kung ito man ay ibibigay talaga nila as a pledge, parang baka pagmukhain nilang humanitarian aid when in fact it doesn't have to be like that. Parang magmumukha silang heroes sa ginagawa nila. Pero in fact, yun nga, ito ay kabayaran. Parang ito yung paniningil natin, yung paglalatag or yung paggamit natin sana nung hustisya, yung katarungan dun sa mga damages, yung loss and damages na ginagawa nito mga Global North as they benefiting from the system na meron tayo ngayon. At gaya nga ng narinig natin sa mga balita, ang COP26 ay may tuturing na isa, sabi nila inclusive, pero in fact exclusive siya, na exclusive siya sa mga naganap na COP sa kasaysayan ng mga pagtitipon para sa klima. Higit pa rito, mapapansin natin na halos wala rin yung kabataan sa hanay ng mga ating mga core negotiators natin. Madalas sila yung nasa observer side, pero alam mo yun, kung wala man at least yung mga youth na nasa core negotiators, at least sana man lang na nakapag-consult sila, nakapag-conduct sila ng mga stakeholder consultations na hindi lang ito youth, pati women, indigenous peoples at iba pang mga marginalized sectors, 'di ba? So ayun, dito matatandaan natin dapat na ang kabataan ay yung pinakamahalagang stakeholders, like what we have just said earlier, sa mga ganitong pagpupulong. Sino ba yung makikinabang diyan sa net zero nila sa 2050? 'Di ba? Ito ba yung mga leaders natin ngayon na pagkatanda-tanda na, 'di ba? Baka nga deads na sila by that time kung saan ma-achieve yung net zero, at baka sinasabi nila yan to delay, or they want to delay it, kasi by that time wala na sila. Pero in fact, yun nga, yung youth nga yung talagang magbe-benefit from these promises that they are saying and the actions that we await from them. Paulit-ulit rin natin itong naririnig, kabataan na magmamana ng mundo. Kaya kung pabagal-bagal tayo sa gagawin nating aksyon, ngayon, aanhin ng kabataan ang mundong malaimpyerno na sa sobrang init, 'di ba? Aanhin natin ang mundong patay na, Ang mahalaga na dapat sinasama rin natin ang kabataan sa ganitong pag-uusap dahil sa huli, 'di ba? Syempre, tayo rin yung makikinabang, and that's basically what the unity statement is all about.
Thank you very much, Jacques. Ayan. Thank you very much, Jacques. Kendrick, may magpapasalamat ka din ba?
No, it's okay. You proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Kendrick. Ayan, Jacques, no, it's a good wrap up to our discussion. Also, everything that we talked about, also somehow listening to you, it also is reflect or parang nagre-reflect din siya, nasa loob din siya ng unity statement yung pinag-usapan natin, which talks about then, or which shows us na how the craft, how this statement was crafted in terms of kung sino yung pinakinggan natin, no? In crafting this unity statement. And as I said, thank you kasi this is a good recall also of what we talked about in terms of loss and damage, in terms of reparations, and how climate justice really is. It's not a donation. This is not the climate financing that we're asking for. It's not a donation. It's a reparation for the damages that have been done, that most of the developing or the global south countries are currently experiencing as a result no ginawa in the past or historically. So just to follow up on that, Jacques, no, can we or can you share to us and for our viewers also, how can people view this statement and what are our next steps after the release of this statement? Jacques? Nawala ata si Jacques
Yeah,
for...
I think nawala siya. Okay. Sige, let's just do we have to wait or we can move on muna? Later na lang, balikan natin siya.
Sige, balikan lang natin si Jacques.
Okay. So yeah, so Jacques gave the highlights ng unity statement. And for me, mas madali siya na-digest ng audience natin ngayon, either sa Zoom or sa Facebook Live. But before we wrap up this episode, we would like again to shout out yung mga Facebook viewers natin. So Ruz, shout out.
Okay. Ayan, Jacques is back daw. So before our shout out, sige mabilis lang. Jacques, are you here with us na?
Yes, narinig ba ako? Sorry.
Yeah. We're able to hear the
Ayan, Jacques is back.
Medyo nagka-problema lang sa internet dahil nakasagap lang ako sa mobile data as of now. So
Wow.
medyo
Thank
pasensya
you so
na.
much for attending.
Okay
so
lang
yeah.
yan, okay lang yan, Jacques. That's one of the things that we also discussed this afternoon, no? How also our access to internet, also limiting our access to this high-level meetings, and not only access na physically there, pero yung updates natin. Anyway, sige, ulitin ko yung question for you, no? Just in case na hindi mo narinig kanina. So it's good na meron na tayong unity statement. So we want to know how can people view this statement and what are our next steps after the release of this statement. Hi, Jacques.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that question. The statement can be viewed with our partner organizations who also posted the unity statement. It's on our Facebook page, and we can provide you also with the PDF copies of the unity statement. And as for the next steps, no, syempre, yun nga, kagaya nga na nabanggit ng mga speakers natin earlier, yung next steps natin, no, lagi nating tandaan, di sa COP nga, 'di ba? Hindi magiging deciding factor ang COP sa anong mangyayari sa future, no? It all boils down to the people. Sila yung magdidikta ng anong klaseng kinabukasan yung gusto nila, no? Lalo na yung kabataan na sila yung mga pinakamahalagang stakeholders, no, ng ating planeta, ng ating kalikasan, no, na sila yung nga yung magmamana nito. So ayun, so just you can send us an email, no, through Youth Strike for Climate ph@gmail.com, or you can contact also our partner organizations, our co-creators who also drafted the statement to provide you with the PDF copies, no? And ayun nga, we will also try to translate it in the language that we all understand, and kasi that's much better, no? We also produce kasi some statements before in Filipino para ma-contextualize natin yung mga yung pag-unawa natin nga sa climate crisis, no? But itong message kasi na ito ay para sa mga Global North leaders at sa ating Philippine delegation. That's why we produce it in English format. And that is what we are trying right now. We are reaching out to the Philippine delegation. So na kahit alam na hindi naman sa hindi nila considerin. Pero I mean, I just want to be hopeful na sana ma-consider nila like what Ate Sophia produced with the Elkoy. Sana ma-consider din nila yon. Lahat ng mga ginagawa ng mga CSOs ng ating mga youth based organizations na sana ma-consider nila. Kasi alam mo yun, this is the perspective of the youth. This is the future that we want to have. Now, please help us to achieve that kind of future for us. Diba? Ayun. So, ayun, we do not end in COP26. We will have patuloy pa rin yung laban, gaya nga na nabanggit kanina. Patuloy pa rin yung laban. Bumoto ng tama, no? Iboto yung mga pinuno of local, national, napipili sa kalikasan, unahin ng kalikasan, who can stand for the country in the future COPs. Actually nga, sana nga itong COP na to yung last para alam mo yun, dire-diretso na tayo, no? Pero parang sa ngayon nalalabuan ako, no? Actually kung ako tatanungin, kung student council siguro ito ng lahat ng mga schools ng buong mundo yung naglunsad ng COP, baka may nagawa tayo, no? Pero wala, medyo problemado tayo sa ating pamahalaan, pero yun nga, sana there is still hope na makapag-elect tayo ng mga leaders na yun nga, unahin yung kalikasan. Kasi yun nga, just like what Ate Sophia mentioned earlier, yung government natin, no? Actually, mas malaki nga yung magiging responsibility nila than the youth, because we are here, the youth, who will just encourage the government, like Ate Sof said earlier, no? And after nun, yung government na yung gagawa ng action that will transcend yung effects ng mga gagawin ng pamahalaan, magta-transcend na ito sa kabataan. Ayun siguro.
Okay, salamat Jacques. So yeah, I think makakatulong ang climate reality for translating yung unity statement kasi it's in English and we have branches and coordinators from different islands in the country. So yeah, it's important na yung statements are localized para maintindihan ng lahat. Okay, so before we move sa ating next part of the program, may isa shoutout lang si Raz.
Ayan, so ito pala yung nafe-feel ng mga ng mga hosts sa TV, yung mini-message sila ng mga kaibigan para mag-shoutout. So, of course, still shout out sa viewers natin. Thank you for joining us today. But shout out to my friend also, a climate justice advocate, Jefferson Estela. Hi, and good luck on the other initiatives that you're doing there in Glasgow. And diba, may ongoing strike pa rin tayo sa Glasgow as we wrap up the COP26. Anyway, so thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. Now we would like to request our speakers for their brief closing messages. Maybe 1 or 2 lines lang, no, to end the show, something that you want to tell our viewers. Sophia, maybe you can start us off.
Let me think. Message. Ang dami namin sinabi kanina, but I think the main message of whatever our discussion today is, it's very, the discussions around COP, climate change, is very complex. There are a lot of intersectionality. Sometimes you will get overwhelmed by the amount of data, science, policy that you would need to go through to understand its entirety. But there are a lot of people in the environmental advocacy that's willing to mentor you and guide you throughout the process to understand better what is happening with this climate crisis from the grassroots up until the international levels, the policy and all the different actions. So siguro there's no need for you to be afraid to jump into this climate advocacy because there are a lot of support that you'll receive. And I think my favorite line, kasi ako nakuha from Elkoy, when Prof. Jessica Brasilia during our capacity building said that the youth should really claim their right to life, especially when talking about the climate change, the climate crisis, because if we don't assert our right to life in this kind of discussion, maybe the next few years we don't even have this right to even claim. So right now, let's pull all our resources, our efforts to ensure that our world leaders, our local government units, president, the legislative, everyone should listen to us and take action, not just listen from this ear and then go out from the other. Thank you.
Okay, salamat Sophia. And for you, Rain, brief closing remarks.
Sorry, dito masyadong brief parang semi. Anyway, nasabi din ni Sophia kanina yung burnout. I want to emphasize lang din na kailangan rin natin ng oras para sa sarili natin. And kasi yun nga, paano natin matutulungan ang ibang tao kung ang sarili natin hindi natin matulungan, hindi natin mabigyan ng sapat na pahinga, na sapat na sustansya. Pero maganda rin isipin na hindi rin natin kasalanan kung bakit tayo nagpapahinga. And again, the goals of the COP26 are good, but they are just in paper. Iba pa ito in practice, mayroong pangako, pero paano ang gawa? Kumusta ang gawa? Dapat involve ang community, dapat may sense of ownership and empowerment. And lastly, huwag tayong matakot, huwag tayong mangangamba, sabagat mayroon pa tayong kayang gawin, at mayroon pa ngang mga kabataan na patuloy na gumagawa at lumalaban. May pag-asa ng pagbabago hanggat hindi pa tayo sumusuko.
Yeah, thank you. Rain, what about you, Xian?
All right. Thank you guys so much again for having me here and for the closing message. I'm actually expecting two things from people who are watching this. And the first thing that I'm expecting is I want you guys to be angry. Okay, now is not the time to just be all about love and happiness and everything, because there is something na kagalit-galit talaga. We have talked about the climate crisis for how many years already, and still it is a problem. Okay? Hindi tayo dapat maging, I'm not saying naman na be negative or be pessimistic, pero it actually, kinakailangan na nating magalit. Kasi kapag hindi pa tayo nagalit, like, ano pang future ang mahahanap natin? But the second point that I want to mention, or the second expectation I have, is while we are angry, while we are frustrated, dapat meron pa rin tayong hope. Okay, we should also be hopeful for the future because there is something that we can do. Okay, hindi pa end of the world, hindi pa natin na-reach exactly at this moment in time yung climate tipping point. So there is still time and there is still hope. That's why we need to use our anger and our hope together para we can have meaningful actions. Okay, and then these actions, pwede yan maging individual, pwede yan maging collective. Pero as Rain has mentioned kanina, what we have to understand is while individual actions are very, very good and very, very great, and we should all be striving, try natin na mag-zero waste lifestyle, try natin na maging vegan kung kaya natin. But what we have to remember as well na kung hindi nagbago yung sistema, hindi natin masasolve ang climate crisis. That's the sad reality that we are facing right now. So dapat magkaroon din tayo ng collective actions. So sa lahat ng mga nakikinig sa atin ngayon, please join an organization. It may be YACAP, it may be YS4C, it may be Parabukas, it may be any organization out there. Because right now, all these organizations are working towards the same goal. So, join an organization, find your niche, okay, kung ano man yung best na nagsusuit sa inyo. And yes, alam ng climate reality yan kasi nagkaroon sila dati ng niche na forum. But find your niche and join organizations and act towards climate justice. So thank you guys once again for having me. Patuloy tayo sa laban natin towards a just and safer future for everyone. Thank you guys.
Okay, salamat Xian. And now going to you, Abby.
Okay, it has been an exciting discussion, and I really learned a lot from everyone here. So I guess just like to reiterate na nothing for us without us. So let's continue making asserting for our space as youth in these discussions for present and future generations. And siguro related dun sa sinabi din ni Xian ay it's good na a drop in the bucket makes ripples, but I think we should start making waves, make some noise for our advocacies on climate change. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. And finally, Jacques.
Ayan. Once again, thank you very much for having this kind of opportunity na lahat tayo nakikinig sa bawat isa, natututo sa bawat isa, sa mga nanonood. Sana marami kayong natutunan from this event, at ma-apply natin sana itong mga nagawa na mga nasabi natin earlier para sa mga susunod nating mga hakbang. Kasi nga, hindi sa COP26 natatapos lahat ng mga ano natin, no, yung ating future doon na ba na-decide? Hindi naman, 'di ba? So, 'yun, emphasis lang din, no, yung focus natin din sa systemic change, kaya mas maganda na magkaroon tayo ng collective action, 'di ba? At yun nga, isang message na rin, again, to reiterate, choose the leaders who will choose nature. So, yun siguro yung, I think, yung may pinakamalaking ambag siguro ng kabataan in this coming few months, no? Malapit na rin kasi ang eleksyon. At ayun siguro, no, sabihin ko na lang din kung ano yung last sentences ng aming unity statement, though. We cannot wait for another COP anymore to talk about taking actions again and again. No, actions must start now. Ayun po.
Yan. Maraming salamat to all our guests for those powerful messages. The fight for climate justice and climate action neither started nor ended with COP. From the get-go, the big players such as the US and host country UK had admitted that COP26 would not be everything we hoped for. That was an accurate prediction. While the outcomes of COP26 fall short of the Paris Agreement's goal to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we insist on 1.5 as committing to 2 degrees Celsius is the equivalent of signing the death sentence of 1 billion people who would be exposed to extreme heat. We, the youth, and the people at the grassroots will not tire of putting the work in to achieve the livable, just, sustainable world we want and deserve, while demanding that those in seats of power do their part too. If they won't keep 1.5 degrees Celsius alive, they better believe we will. Our global movement, built on a strong foundation of community, friendship, and solidarity, will keep 1.5 degrees Celsius alive.
Okay. Sobrang dami talagang learnings ngayong araw. And from an environmental science background, I really appreciate yung environmental health, environmental law, and we have a hardcore science of physics. So I really want to parang point out that our climate action should be interdisciplinary, holistic, inclusive, and syempre aim for participatory governance. So before we really end the episode, once again, taos-pusong pasasalamat sa ating mga viewers sa Facebook. I hope, like me, marami kayong natutunan. Plug lang natin ulit na to join our community and follow the Climate Reality Project. On Instagram, that's at Climate Reality PH, and Twitter, it's at Climate Real PH. And after this, sama kayo sa amin on Instagram kasi we have a short quiz. And again, our handle is Climate Reality PH. Also, you can visit the socials of our guests, organizations with their handles flashed on the screen. So yeah, we have Climate Reality, YACAP, and everyone else. And then just a quick reminder to those who would like to get a certificate of participation for this episode, please don't forget to answer our feedback form. It will be posted in the comment section below.
Thank you, everyone. This has been Klimatotohanan, a webcast organized and led by climate reality leaders to tackle the urgent climate issues of today and tomorrow. Why Klimatotohanan? Because we need real talk and real action on the climate crisis. Thank you once again for tuning in, and see you again in our next episode. Maraming salamat po at magandang gabi sa lahat.